So hello friends, welcome back to Papaya Coders. We are back with a new video. In this video we are going to learn a very new concept which is Koin. Like this Koin is used for dependency injection. We will come to know that how we are going to use dependency injection using Koin and how is this Koin different from Dagger Hilt. I hope so you guys have watched our playlist. In this we have explained that what is this Dagger Hilt. Let me just redirect you to the video which I am referring to actually. You can visit Papaya Coders, then move to the playlist section. You can see a Android tutorial English playlist over here. And here we have a video where you can understand Dagger Hilt and its implementation. We have two crash courses. One of them is on XML and the another one is on Jetpack Compose. You can definitely go to through it. And we also have a dedicated movie app in which I have explained what is RX Java and how we are going to make two simultaneous API calls using single.zip method. So make sure that you check out these videos. These are very interesting videos. So yeah, let's get back to our topic, that what is Koin and how this thing is different from Dagger Hilt. Okay, so I hope so you have subscribed our channel and make sure you hit the bell icon so that you get all our latest updates first. So let's get started. Okay, so first thing, what is Koin? The main thing is why we are using Koin and what is Koin. Koin is a programmatically designed dependency injection framework specifically for Kotlin. Okay, remember this line, it is specifically for Kotlin. It is purely written in Kotlin, means no code generation and no reflection shall occur. And we are using DSL, which is domain specific language, for configurations, and it is designed to be lightweight and straightforward. It focuses on practical usage rather than complex configurations. Like if you have used Dagger Hilt in any of your programs, if you are not aware of Dagger Hilt, let me just show you with a quick video. Like you can see over here, I have implemented Dagger Hilt over here. Okay, I need to update few of my components, that's why it's showing error over here. Otherwise this code is completely correct. As you can see, I have used Dagger Hilt over here, so you can see that how complex is this thing in actual. Like this Dagger Hilt is very useful for scalable projects, but I must say that if you're working on a smaller project, then this Dagger Hilt is a little bit complex for beginners also and to implement also. So if our use case is not that scalable or it is limited, then we can definitely go for this Koin. Okay, and since this is written purely in Kotlin, so we have an upper hand also. Okay, so what are the core principles of Koin? Right, we have a module layer. As we can see over here, we have a module, app module. We also are going to make a module layer in our Koin app also. And Koin implements the service locator pattern. A central module maintain all the dependencies and all other components request the dependency from this module. Like how? Let me show you. Let us see where is this app module actually called. This app module might be called inside our view models. Let me guess. Okay, as you can see, this is called in a view model. So whenever this view model is called, like just let me explain you how the things are actually working. So this view model, auth view model, is actually dependent on the repository and the profile image manager. Okay, so means this auth view model require these two files to work. Clear? And since we are using Dagger Hilt here, so it is the work of Dagger Hilt to provide these dependencies whenever auth view model requires them. It is clear, I hope so. It was very simple explanation. So means whenever any class requires any dependency for its working, so Dagger is responsible for bringing those dependencies to it so that it can function. Like in our case, auth view model requires the repository and profile image manager for functioning. So this Dagger is going to bring all of the resources and provide it to the auth view model so that it can function. Okay. Don't worry, we are not going to copy this code. We are going to write the whole code from the scratch. Not this one, just a new project. But for now, just understand that what I'm trying to say, that like what is the work of this Dagger, Hilt or Koin, like what are they actually doing? Okay, so how they are bringing it, let me just show you. Let's go to the app module, and here we can see we have an auth provide auth repository. Okay, so we have called this method in our auth view model. So this method requires auth and firestore for functioning. So Dagger will keep the track of this, and whenever the things are required, it will provide them. Okay, so let's now move forward to our Koin. We have a simple repository system over here like we have in the Dagger Hilt. Also we are going to have our dependency injection layer. In that we are going to call our methods. Okay, we have something called dependency resolution. Like Koin uses function type declaration components. Okay, and the resolution is done at the runtime. Okay, and it is lazy by default, means whenever it is required, then only we are going to provide the dependency resolution. Okay, you will get to know, just be with me, I will explain everything pretty well. Okay, for now just try to grasp all the knowledge which I'm just trying to tell you. Okay, we have something called scope management also in Koin, which is like global scope, which is the default scope for single instances. We will understand what is single instances, what is view model, and what is this factory. Okay, and we have few custom scopes also. Then we have some different types of styles to declare our dependency, like we have a direct dependency declaration, then we have something called interface binding, and we have some different injection methods, like we have constructor injection, dependency provide through the constructor, and like many other things. Don't worry, I will make you do a very small project. In that we will understand everything in super details. Okay, so what we shall do is now go to our Android Studio and create a new file, and there we shall understand everything. Let's go for it. Select this compose one and let's name it as Koin. Let the Gradle sync. Meanwhile, just be with me and we will understand this thing very well. Okay, we are just going to mimic like a very small project. We are just here to understand the core concepts of Koin. We are not here to make a very full-fledged app. If you want a full-fledged app, I have already covered it inside our movie app, which you can definitely go and refer. Like I have explained everything, like how to use Koin inside that movie app, which I was referring at the starting. Okay, that where we are going to use single zip method to call two APIs simultaneously, that one. Okay, so basic thing first, let's go to our Gradle file and add the dependencies for our Koin. So okay, so let me just copy the dependency which we are going to actually use. Let's come over here. Let me first just change this compile SDK. Then the version which we are going to actually use is 3.4.0, which is the stable one. Okay, let's enclose this thing, and I hope so we are good to go. Let me see. Okay, a newer version is available. Let's update it to 3.550 and let's sync the project. Then we are just going to mimic a small project in which we are going to load the user, like no actual data shall be loaded, but we are going to learn that how that loading can be made easy using Koin. Okay, just let it sync here. Okay, first of all, what we need to do is to create our data layer. Let's come inside this, and inside this let's create a new package, name it as data, and inside this data we want to create a data class. Let's create another package and name it as models, and inside this models let us have our first model, which is users. Okay, let it be a data class. So we will have very simple thing like a val id, which is going to be of type int. Then we will have a name and email. Okay, it was showing me some suggestions. Yep, this email one. Okay, so that is pretty much for our user right now. Like, we don't want our app to be very complex. For starting, let's keep it simple. Then let's have a data source layer. So let's create a data source package over here. Inside this data source, let's have an interface. Let it be user data source. Okay, great. Now let us create some functions which are actually going to mimic the methods, like getting the user or getting the user by ID, like something like that. Like we are trying to load the data from Firebase or any other. Okay, like this one. I think so. This thing is hearing me. Yeah, it's pretty advanced right now, right? And let's have another suspend function. Okay, this is impressive. Like, this is what actually I wanted, just the name is a little bit different. Okay, we have two methods over here. One of them is to get the user, and this will return us a list of users. And this is like a suspend function, get users by ID. This will take ID as an input, and then it will return us something of type users. Let us make them nullable. Okay. Now what we can do is like implementation of data source. We need that too. Let's add user data source. Okay. Now what we are going to do, for the abstraction sake, we have this as an interface, and now we are going to expose this to our rest of the application. So this user data source implementation will extend the user data source. Yep, this one. And then let's continue. Let's have a private val of type users, which is equal to mutable list of, actually, let me get the mutable list. Yep, this one. Mutable lists of let's say users. So let us create some dummy users. Okay, let me just have a dummy user. The first dummy user shall be like the ID is 1. Then we can name it as papaya coders, and let's have an email also. Okay, so this is our dummy user. Let's have another dummy user. Okay, great. We have these things implemented over here. This is showing me a little bit of error. Let me just resolve this. Okay, this is asking me to import the dependency, which I don't want because I'm not using such method. Okay, I missed a comma over here. That was the issue. Okay. Now what is this? Make user data source implementation abstract. No, why would I? Okay, let's just implement the members. We want to implement few members which we had generated. Let us add those methods. Yep, implement the members. Let's implement our members. Okay, great. And what we want to do, since we are here not to do anything, just here to understand the thing, so let's just make it equal to the users, and this too we can just remove this to do from here, and simply let's just remove this thing, and we can make it something like, let me just, yep, users dot find, and what we are going to find, the particular user, it dot id equal to id. Okay, this was very clean and very simple. Now let's go to our module layer again and create a new repository. Okay, let's create a new. Great. Now inside this repository, let us create our user repository. Okay. So okay, this user repository will actually require our data source. Okay, so let us give it as in constructor. Now as you can see, this repository actually requires this thing for its functioning. No, so whenever these things will be required, it will provide it by Koin. Okay, we will create a dependency injection layer. In that we will create a module which will keep the all those things, like handle all these things. Okay, let's have a private val of type user data source, and this will be of type user data source. Okay, so inside this, what we are going to do inside our repository, we are going to have a suspend function to get all users and to get the users. Okay, so let's have a function. This was our method, and what we are going to do is simply we're going to use our data source dot get users. Okay, and then next thing, let's have another suspend function which will be get users. Like if you want to get a specific user, then what we shall do, we shall use get user by id method. Yep, this one. Okay, so our repository code is also completed. Now what we need to do is we need to create a use case. Okay, we need to provide it an initial id. Let's pass id over here. And let's get it over here. Okay, great. Now what we need to do is we need to create an implementation, sorry, not implementation, the user case. Okay, so let's create another package. Let's name it as use case. And what we'll have inside this package is pretty simple. We will have a class which will show the further implementation. Let's have it. So I am keeping this thing in mind that you have a basic idea about MVVM. So I'm not explaining like what is data layer, what is data source, what is model. I hope so you have watched our videos and these things are pretty clear to you. If you have any doubts, please feel free to comment, and you can obviously watch all our previous videos. Your concept would be crystal clear if you watch our MVVM videos. Okay. So inside this get users use case, we will have an implementation of our repository because this file requires our repository. Yep, this one. Let's import our repository and let's remove this. So what we are going to do, we are going to have a suspend operator function invoke repository dot get all users. Now let's create our view model. Before that, what we can do, okay, now let's create our view model. Then only at last we would implement our dependency injection layer. Actually, that DI layer or app module generally consists of all the third-party calls. Like if you want to make any third-party calls, for example, Firebase or any network call. So we basically initialize it at the starting of our app, and I prefer to do that at very first. Okay, so let's have a package ViewModel. Inside this package, let's create our user view model. So what this view model is going to use, this is going to use our users use case. Now why we have all these files? Like if you was having repository, then what is the point of using this get users use case? Actually, you can see that this thing is implementing the user data source, and user data source is kind of abstracted thing. Like I don't want it to be exposed everywhere. So that's why I'm using the get users use case to hide all of that implementation. Remember this, like I don't never expose your secrets to anyone, like never expose how you are making the API call, and never expose any other thing, sensitive data like that. Just make an implementation out of them and expose that to your app. Okay, like this user data source implementation is actually extending the user data source. Okay, let's get to our user view model, and this view model will require our get users use case. Yep, this one. So what this thing is going to simply do, we will have a mutable state flow. I hope you have a prior knowledge for that, like what is this mutable state flow. If you have any doubt, please feel free to comment. We will make a separate video on mutable state flow and mutable shared flow. This is a very small topic, we can cover it in within a single video. Okay, so let's have a private val users, which will be equal to mutable state flow. Okay, let me, I think so I need to type it. Yep, this one. This mutable state flow would be of type list. Yeah, this is the exact code we actually need. Let's import the user, and what we want is an empty list for now. And then what we want to do is, since we are using a mutable state flow, so we need to have an initial value. Our initial value is empty list right now. We could have a sealed class like the user data condition like whether the data is loading, success, or we are in error state. So we can provide that thing over here, like till the data is being loaded, we could show the loading state, and once the data is being loaded, we can show our success state. We can have some sealed classes. Actually, sealed classes are like envelope. So whenever we want to have specific things, like the data can be either in loading state, either in success, or either in error state, so we can use sealed class for that. That is a whole different concept. We are not here to understand that. We are just here to understand what is Koin and how we are going to implement that inside our application. But the comment box is still open. You can make use of it. Make sure that you use it. Let it be a state flow, and state flow would be of type list of users, and this thing will be equal to users dot as state flow. Okay, we are done from here. Now what we are going to do is to have a very small method which is basically going to load the users from our get users use case. Let's use our ViewModel scope.launch method and then simply set the user value. First of all, we can actually set the user's value to loading, and then we can try to get the user's use case. So that is the actual process of how to do the things, but this is just a dummy app. Okay, now let's get over here and create another main package which will be di, and this di is our dependency injection package. And let's create our first app. Okay, let's come inside over here and create an app module. This would not be a class anymore. We will simply have a val app module, and this thing will be equal to module. Now from where this module is coming, you can see this is coming from Koin. What is model, then what is single, and what is factory? First of all, let me just write the code. Okay, the single is actually, just let me complete it. Just a minute, guys, please just let me complete the code, then it would be pretty easy for me to explain you guys. Okay, okay, so we have three things over here. First of them is single, then we have a factory, then we have a view model. So what is this single means? Single is actually like it creates a single instance of the same thing everywhere, and factory creates a new instance every time, and a view model is like a special factory for view models. And then what is this thing get? Then this get is like an annotate, is a method which can be used to automatically resolve the dependencies. Okay, now I know that this thing was not clear to you. This thing was like just above your head. Now let's get into the depth and understand this in a little bit more explanatory method. Okay, so understand single first. Single creates a singleton instance that persists throughout the app lifecycle. Means we will not have any other instance of this user data source or data source implementation throughout our app. Okay, like this is generally used for the services, like if we have a network call, so we want to make it singleton, like we have a single call. We don't want to make several calls to our network. Then for our repositories or any class, that should have only one instance. Like our data source in this case should have only one instance. That's why we are using single over here. Okay. Then the next thing which is that understand is factory. Okay. Now this factory creates a new instance of each line whenever it is requested. It is generally used for objects that needs a fresh state or that should not be shared. Okay. For example, this user repository, we don't want to. Okay, just a minute. Let me have a look. I think. Okay, just a second, guys, please. Yeah, we actually don't you need the single anymore. I have just repeated this thing, my bad. Okay, so this factory generally creates a new instance of the file which we generally don't want to duplicate or we don't want it. Okay, so this factory is used over here. As you can see, it is generally used for objects that needs a fresh state. Means we need this user repository as a fresh state whenever we require it. Okay. So the another thing is the view model. As I told you, this view model is a special type of repository which is basically for the view models. It handles the life cycle and survives the life cycle state. That's why this is a different type of factory. Like the instance is created, but it survives the life cycle changes. Okay. And then what is this thing get? This get is like getting us all the methods automatically. Like, just try to understand, this automatically injects the things required for the user repository. Like our user repository requires the data source, so this thing will automatically inject it over there. And like our user view model also require our user get data source, get users use case. So this get will automatically inject what is required. Okay, so this was a very small and very easy explanation. I hope so it was clear to you. Okay, now when we are using this dependency injection methods, like if we have Dagger or we are using something else, then we basically need to create a application. So let us have one for our app. So this application will simply extend application, and this will contain an override. This method is basically going to override, since this my application is extending the parent class. The parent class is application, and we are going to override the onCreate method of this. Okay, let's override the onCreate method, super onCreate. What we are going to do, we are simply going to start the Koin. Start Koin, and what we are going to start is basically Android logger, and the next thing would be Android context. Just a minute, I will explain you. And in this context, let us pass this as my application, and we need to pass our modules over here. Right now we have only one module, which is app module. If we have more than one module, like I have in that movie app, I would recommend you to watch our movie app after this video. Then it would be pretty clear for you guys. Like you will have a better explanation of the things. Okay. Okay, then the next thing which we shall have is to set up our manifest file. Inside this manifest file, simply have a name which is my application. Okay, this thing is clear. Now let's try to understand what is this Android logger and else things. Okay, so this Android logger is generally used to initialize the Koin built-in logger, which helps us in debugging on dependency injections issues. It basically logs the important Koin message like dependency, resolution, error, and lifecycle events. Okay, these logs are printed in the logcat under the tag Koin. So means whenever we are going to have any sort of error or any other thing, so this Android logger will basically log it inside the logcat, and we are going to see it in the runtime. Okay, so the next thing is like what we have is Android context. This Android context provide the application context to the Koin. This allows the Koin to inject the context into the dependency wherever needed. Let me repeat this thing. This Android context will allow the Koin to inject the context into the dependencies wherever it is needed. Okay, so why is it this important? This is like many Android components like our shared preferences, room database, and many other things requires an application context. If Koin does not have the access to the context, it can't create the instance of those dependencies. Okay, now let's have the last one, which is this module, app modules. So basically this is registering the dependencies module in the Koin. Like app module is Koin's module that contain the definitions of all the dependencies. And inside this, then we have the single factory and view model, which is pretty clear to you right now. Okay, now let's try to load our things inside our UI. Let's create a new package called screens. Inside this screens, let's create our user screen. So this is like a basic method. Let's have a function. Let's have @composable tag to make it a UI part. Okay, so what this user screen will actually require is view models, and which would be our user view models, and this shall be provided to us by Koin. Get the view models. Now let's have our val users by view models. View models dot users dot collect the state. Since it was a state flow, that's why we are trying to collect it as a state. Now let's have a launch effect. First of all, we can have that. Let's have this launched effect. Let's provide it unit initially, and then what we are going to do, we are going to use view model dot load users. Then we are just simply going to load the users, and then let's have a column to show the users, right? Let's have the column. Inside this column, we are simply going to use users dot for each users. What we are going to use, we are having that lambda. We are just going to show the name of the users. Okay, let's just bring it down and import the user. Import this text, and let's set the text is equal to user dot name. Okay, this should be curly braces actually. Let's change this thing. Yeah, now this thing is pretty good. So we are just simply trying to load our user data from our view models, and we are having a text view to show the name of the users. We are using a launch effect to use it. So we are simply going to call it inside our main activity. Let's come over here and remove this for a while. And what we are going to do is basically just remove all of these things. And let's have our surface actually. Let's provide it a modifier. Okay. Then let's call our method over here, which is user screen. Let's import this thing. Let's try to fire this thing up. Okay, we have some error. Okay, resolved. Now let's try to fire this thing up and let's see how this thing is basically going to look to us, like how the data is going to display with the help of Koin, and let's see if we have some sort of error or not. Okay, meanwhile, let me show you this expense tracker app. If this thing opens on the emulator, yep. So this was an app tutorial which we have on our application. So basically this is an expense tracker app that uses room database, and we are going to store our daily base expenses over here. Like you can see, we have a pretty good animation, we have a scroll effect, and we have much more things. Okay, then we can go inside this transaction, we can have our income, we can have our expense. Okay, this thing is crashing. Let's close this thing and let's see. Okay, the app crashed initially or something happened. Let's just see. Okay, the app is getting crashed as soon as this thing opens. Let's have a look in the logcat. Okay, let's just see. The Koin keeps to stop, close the application. Yep, here is the error. Let us have a look. Okay, the Koin says no compose Koin context setup default, use Koin context or Koin app function to set up or create Koin context to avoid message. Okay, not definition type. We have some sort of error in our module configuration and add the missing qualifiers. Okay, let's get to our app module. Okay, just a minute. Okay, I got the error. The error is this, that instead of this repository, the factory means new instance should be created of the get users use case. Okay, and since we don't want it to be singleton, and what we want as in single was the repository, users repository, and let's provide it the get method. Means of which whatever the method should be required by this shall be provided to it by Koin. Okay, let's see what user repository actually requires. User repository actually requires a user data source, and we have created a single instance of the user data source over here. Now let's try once again and let's have a look. Okay, we can see our users. As you can see that Papaya coders and Navdeep Singh over here. This is pretty much we want. We don't want a very impressive UI. This was just to show that how we are going to set up our whole application when we want our Koin for dependency injection. So we have our data layer. Inside that we had our data source. where we have created two dummy methods. Then we have our data source implementation, where we have implemented it. We have created our users, and if you want, we can basically duplicate this file. Okay, and then we have our repository, where we have this method to get all the users. It is using the users data source to get the users. And then we have our use case, like which I am exposing to my app. I haven't exposed my repository. Like my repository is only used inside my use case, and I'm using this use case in my view models. Like this is exposed to my app. This repository, this user data source is very sensitive. Like when we are working in a real life app, so this part is like very sensitive. So I don't want it to be exposed for my whole app. And make sure that you follow this approach. You are not exposing all of the things to the applications. Okay. So then we have our screens. This was a very basic UI screen. Okay. And then we have our main activity, and we have our applications setup. So this is how we structure a Koin method and how we are going to implement that inside our app. I would suggest you guys to watch all our playlists. Let me just show you. I would suggest you to watch this. Yep, this one. Jetpack Compose movie app. In this, we have used Koin in a very vast extent, and this is literally a very good application you can refer to. Okay, so I hope so you like this video. Make sure to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon once again, and like all of our videos, and do share these videos with your friends. This really motivates us to make such content for you guys. Like we are super happy to bring you such quality content on YouTube, and like this is the latest technology which you guys are learning. Like our channel is providing us the latest technologies. Okay, so I hope you like this video. That's it for this video, and once again subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thank you guys.